Welcome to the YPO Cannabis Summit meeting. I hope that you will enjoy the meeting. I hope that the lectures that you will hear will advance the field, and I hope that this will be a major step towards introducing cannabinoid drugs in the market within the next few years. Thank you for coming. I was invited to this meeting together with my friend, colleague, Reshef Swisa, and we shall be discussing several aspects of cannabinoid research with the aim of hopefully getting a new drug within a reasonable time. Hello, Reshef.
Hi, Rafi. Thank you so much. Thank you for coming. Thank you for all the members of YPO for inviting us. My name is Reshef. I'm born here in Israel. I live in the US. I funded EPM at the end of 2016 together with a good friend of mine, Asaf Ohana. We started the company with the greatest belief that cannabinoids should become prescription medicine and should help people around the world to ease the sufferingness they have from diseases that currently have no cure or no solution. We started the journey together with Professor Mechoulam. It was a big pleasure to meet him at the beginning of the way, learn a lot, be educated on the chemistry and the potential that it lays within the cannabinoids research. Rafi introduced us the molecules, our cannabinoid acids, and the rest is history. EPM, it's a growing company in the field. We are advancing medicine developments thanks to molecules that was developed by Rafi. And it's an honor and a pleasure to be here today and conduct this interview for Rafi. So Rafi, I think to start this discussion, the best way is to give an overview. So in terms of research, can you describe the major stages that you have occurred in the last 50 years?
Well, it is a bit strange. When we started work way back in the 1960s, I was a young person at that time.
You're still young?
I was surprised to find out that the science of cannabis was not well established. The chemistry was not well established, contrary to many other compounds like morphine or cocaine and so on. And so my group initiated a project looking at the chemistry of cannabinoids. We thought that that's something that will take a few years. Well, we're still working on many aspects. And the reason is that we have found that the cannabinoids are of extreme interest, both chemically, pharmacologically, and clinically. When we started work, nobody was interested. I asked for a grant from NIH at that time, basic science, let's see what's the chemistry of cannabinoids, and I was told by NIH at that time, nobody smokes marijuana in the US. When you find something more relevant, well, we shall try to help. Well, they changed their minds. A few years later, they came over. At that time, we isolated the active compound in a pure form. I think this is the first time that it was isolated. We elucidated the structure of the major active compound and many additional new compounds that had not been seen previously. And they were very interested. And indeed, for many years, the basic science was supported by NIH in the US, and we moved from pure chemistry to chemistry and pharmacology and so on. Now, the three major phases, if you wish, of cannabinoid research are as follows. First of all, there is the chemistry of the plant, of the cannabis, sativa cannabis indica plant. It contains a large number of very specific compounds which have very interesting activities. They are not the same, they are different, they have different activities. The plant makes cannabinoid acids. Now, these compounds are not stable, and therefore they have not been investigated thoroughly. We found a way recently, over the last couple of years, to stabilize these acids, and so it was possible to investigate their pharmacology and hopefully clinical trials with in several different areas. Now, this is the first phase. The basic science has advanced on. The compound, the best known compound in cannabis is THC, tetrahydrocannabinol, and this compound was found to bind to a receptor, and then we found that our body makes compounds that bind to that particular receptor. THC just mimics the activity of the compounds that our body makes. So this is the second phase of cannabinoid research. The compounds that we make, and they bind to the receptors. Over the last few years, we have also found that our body makes many additional chemically related compounds which act in many, many different areas. So here we have three different stages. The best known stage, of course, is the work on the cannabis plant, on the cannabinoids that are found in the plant. And again, there are compounds that cause the effects, well-known effects of marijuana, and compounds that are there, like the acids or cannabidiol. And these compounds do not bind to the receptors, but they have a large number of activities.
Right. Thank you. I think EPM enjoyed the finding of the cannabinoid acid, as I believe we are the only company today that really took the cannabinoid acid, developed it together with you, obviously, into compounds that can be developed into medicine. But I think an interesting curve that will touch on both cannabis-related companies and the pharmaceutical companies is the entourage effect of multiple use of cannabinoids versus the single molecule activities in drug development. How do you see the synergy between the entourage, between the prescription medicine, whether prescription medicine should be only developed on a single molecule? Do you believe that the entourage is essential for drug development?
Well, most scientists prefer to work on well-described compounds, single compounds. Working on a mixture is a very complicated story. If one has to depend on an extract, extracts are never the same. So here you have a major problem. And indeed, modern drugs are usually single drugs,
correct,
or at most a mixture of several drugs, but well defined. And this is how we went ahead looking at specific cannabinoid compounds. But we know that in many cases there is activity is changed or is more potent by compounds that are found in the plant, and they change or make more potent specific compounds, and we call this effect the entourage effect. Unfortunately, it has not been investigated thoroughly. It is very complicated, as there are many compounds in the plant. At the moment, we work mostly on specific compounds, and I hope that if we have the time and the manpower to look at specific mixtures and see whether indeed what we know that is happening today when people smoke cannabis, they prefer a mixture rather than a specific compound.
Right.
If we can go ahead with investigations in this particular area.
I think if we take the career of 50 years, can you point an event or a study that when it happened and when it conducted was a failure, was not successful, but led to a development that created even more interesting routes that lead to success?
Well, I believe that there are several points. Possibly the first stage was the identification of the active compound. We found, we were able to isolate tetrahydrocannabinol in a pure state. We elucidated its structure. Later we synthesized it, and we looked at the activity of this compound, of THC, and of many of the other compounds. And we were quite surprised to find out that THC, out of probably several dozens of compounds which we knew at that time, it was the only one that caused the psychoactivity.
Right.
Now, this psychoactivity from a medical point of view is not of great interest. I mean, people don't take a drug in order to be high.
Right.
They take a drug for a certain specific disease. So in this respect, THC, although it is very interesting from a scientific point of view, from a medical point of view, THC is not, and probably will not be, a major drug. As a matter of fact, it has been approved as a drug, but it is a minor drug.
Right.
Some of the other compounds are much more interesting. Cannabidiol, or the precursor of cannabidiol, cannabidiolic acid, are much more interesting from a pharmaceutical point of view because they do not cause any major side effects. They are not toxic. Cannabinoids are not toxic. They are not toxic. They do not cause major side effects. They have been shown in preclinical studies and in some cases in clinical studies that they have quite a lot of interesting and promising activities. So I believe that we shall see advances mainly with the non-psychoactive constituents of cannabis, and we have been working the last few years on the cannabinoid acids. Cannabidiol is known to cause a huge number of positive effects. Its precursor, the cannabidiolic acid, has been investigated to a lesser extent, and we have found recently, in collaboration with your company, with TPM, we have found that it has quite a few additional activities, and I hope that one of these activities, or several of these activities, will push this compound towards the clinical
stage. If you need to describe the biggest challenge for a company that is looking to develop drugs out of cannabis, what would be that challenge?
Well, here we have a background of a lot of information. Cannabis is known to affect a huge number of diseases. So this is a challenge to take one of the compounds, several of the compounds, and try to modify them so that they will become even more potent and will have even less side effects, although cannabidiol by itself doesn't have many side effects. And this is one of the areas that are hopefully well advanced so that we can reach the clinical stage very early. But at the moment, the most promising area is actually the plant compounds, the compound that the plant makes and we can modify and possibly use the knowledge that has accumulated on these compounds and on cannabis in general. Many types of inflammation, many types of the effects on in other diseases. So I believe that we shall be seeing cannabinoid compounds based on the plant material within the next few years.
That leads me to a question which I believe everybody will be happy to hear the answer to. You see and you exposed to so many projects in the cannabis field. If you need to point one that it's exciting you and you believe it's a route that needs to be followed for the next 10 years, for the next decades of developments, what would be that research? What would be that area that you believe is the most exciting one?
Well, there are many effects that we see. One basic effect is inflammation.
Right.
There are different types of inflammation. Many diseases have a background of inflammation, although we don't recognize them.
Right.
Even recently, quite a few diseases have been shown to have a background of inflammation. I was just reading yesterday on the background of Alzheimer's disease, and to a certain extent, it's inflammation.
Wow.
Specific inflammation doesn't lead to temperature changes and so on. So chances are that we should be looking at specific inflammatory processes in the body, not a general one, but a specific one. And I believe that we shall see the cannabinoids, synthetic cannabinoids, acting in this way. And this is why it has been used for thousands of years.
So if you need to point between the cannabinoids, the precursor, which are the cannabinoid acids, or the molecule that our body produces, which to your belief is the molecules that will be the one that introduced as a drug the earliest, or that we should be focused at?
Well, at the moment, we have from the natural cannabinoids, THC has been approved as a drug, a minor drug to a certain extent, and cannabidiol was approved 2 or 3 years ago for specific epilepsies.
Right.
Again, here we have something which is happening all the time. We showed that cannabidiol is an anti-epileptic agent 35 years ago. Then we worked on the we were able to move from the preclinical to the clinical stage. And we showed that in the clinical stage, cannabidiol is an excellent anti-epileptic drug. It doesn't cause side effects, and it worked in patients that nothing else was helping them. And yet it took 30 years for this observation, published observation, clinical observation, to move to become a drug. Today, cannabidiol has been approved as a drug for certain epileptic conditions.
Right.
So I hope that things have changed now. I hope that the work we are doing now will not wait for another 30 years to become a drug.
Over the course of your career, what are you most proud of?
Well, looking again at the decades of work that I have done in cannabinoids, probably the most exciting points were the elucidation of the structure of the active compound of THC, and this particular paper has been cited thousands of times.
Right.
Another point is the identification of the endogenous compound that we produce, the anandamide. This compound, I just looked at the literature a few days ago, has been cited more than 6,000 times in the literature, because it is the basis of a new physiological system. We know about quite a few physiological systems of major importance, and they have been known since the 30s and 40s. And here we help discover a new physiological system based on the cannabinoid receptors and the cannabinoid constituents that we discovered, anandamide and 2-AG. So probably these are the two most important points in my scientific career, if you wish.
Beautiful. And if you need to point, what would you like to be known as your greatest legacy?
Well, probably as the scientists that help develop or help discover the constituents of the plant, one, helped in establishing the endogenous cannabinoid system by the discovery of anandamide and 2-AG, and hopefully in the future by helping advance a therapeutic drug based on the cannabinoids. This is for the future. The first two are the past.
The past. If you need to point cannabinoid acid within the course of the excitement of your development, where would you position the cannabinoid acid and the derivatives you are developing in the recent years out of those compounds?
Well, we discovered the cannabinoid acids many years ago.
Right.
But they were not of any major interest until we came back to them a few years ago and found that we can stabilize them. They're not stable. They break down. So we could stabilize them and thus make possible their development as drugs, not necessarily the acids themselves, maybe derivatives of the acids.
Right.
But this is something that is happening at the moment.
And we are enjoying doing it together, and I'm more than honored to carry that part of legacy from yours into the clinic.
It is a mutual pleasure.
Thank you so much. Some words to the audience for the young ones among us that are ambitious, that we are so much driving our companies towards the same success that you're aiming. What would be a good tip for us? What would be something that we should carry while we are focusing on one hand on the commercial side of the developments and looking on the scientific as well? Give us a winner's tip.
Well, I believe that the basic scientific side and the commercial side should go hand in hand. It is of major interest to help establish new scientific areas or help understand how our body works, and in this case is the endogenous cannabinoid system. But we shall also try at the same time to use our knowledge of the endogenous cannabinoid system and of related material in order to advance the medical side, in order to make possible the advancement of these compounds, which, as I said, are of major biological interest, to advance them to become drugs, which has happened with many other drugs in the past.
Right. Professor Mechoulam, or as I usually call you, Rafi, thank you so much for your time. I really much appreciate it. I hope you enjoy the time, and I hope we learn more, and I wish all of us good luck in our way of introducing medicine that not only help people, helping their families, helping their surroundings, and being proud of delivering nature into our bodies. Good luck and enjoy the rest of the summit.
Thank you.